Hey everybody, wake up. This is Wake Up with Mark Joyner, episode number 52. And today we will ask the question, is everything connected? All right, it's kind of a tricky question actually. Let me give you the short TLDR answer for this, and then we will explore this a little bit further. So is everything connected? Well, first off, it's not a thing we can know. As with all generalizations, when people come out and they say, everything is this or all that, or all people, all, every time this person, blah, blah, we're presupposing an omniscient data set that none of us have. Think about it, right? How could we know that everything is connected? You would have to know everything, right? You would have to know every little thing that comprises the universe, and you would have to know all of the complex and intricate ways in which things are related, right? You would have to know all of that. I don't think you have that. If you do, call me. I want to know. I would like to meet somebody who has that level of knowledge. I don't. I don't profess to. I don't know if I ever will in any lifetime. Maybe that's not the point, right? Maybe we're not supposed to. But what I can tell you is this. There definitely is strong evidence that many, many things are connected in very, very surprising ways. We know that certain things are connected for sure, right? I mean, we can see correlations between things. Whether or not these correlations represent causality is an entirely different discussion. You know, I think causality is not as simple as most people say. One of my favorite Joynerisms is that causality is not binary. It is always multivariate and conditionally dependent, right? And you don't know all of the variables and you don't know all of the conditions. So when we say X causes Y, we must caution ourselves to take those statements very, very seriously. But let me tell you what got me onto this. So now as I was doing my morning routine this morning, that's why I'm always sweaty when I do these things. I always come right out and boom, I do my morning routine, and then I come out and I shoot these videos, boom, impromptu, on the fly. And sometimes I'll get some thoughts about what I might talk about. And in between that time, I will come up with a title, and I'll just, boom, I'll just start doing this thing impromptu. Now, the thing that I was thinking about was how recently I started incorporating something new into my routine again. So, sometimes I like to work in a standing desk. It's one of the healthier ways to do it. The problem with a standing desk is that it gets you a little bit tired, right? So it's hard to stand up, and also it poses its own problems, right? If you're not moving throughout the day, even if you're standing, you're still going to get stiff. So I do this combination now between standing up and then I will recline in this thing called the perfect chair. You can Google it. You probably heard me mention that before. I've owned about 5 of these things. They're wonderful. Problem with the perfect chair is if I get in there, I can get into a nice cozy groove in the perfect chair on my laptop, way, way more comfortable than sitting at a terrible desk where everything is at 90 degrees and stuck and frozen. And this is why everything is all stiff for so many of us. Our hamstrings are shortened and our bodies are tight. Well, in the perfect chair, it's a lot better ergonomically. There are some flaws. It's not perfect. But if you sit in that thing too long, you are static. And like I was talking about the other day, as the great Paul Chek says, the lymphatic system does not have a pump. You must be constantly moving to pump your lymph system. There are reasons why we were designed to move. We were not designed to be stuck in these little chairs. So I started reincorporating this thing where, every 30 minutes I would get up and I would do certain movements. And then I do that for a few minutes, drink some water, and then get right back to work. Now that reincorporating that back into my day over the last several days has had huge impact on just about everything for me. Let's talk about this now. Hold that thought. I'm gonna loop back around to that. So, the other day I posted a very honest and open Facebook post to everybody saying, hey, I'm at a point now where I'm ready to start, upping my game again more. I've been kind of quiet and behind the scenes, for the last many, many years, not as active and loud, as I was back in the early days, making, big splashes, in the online world. And I said, hey, I'm open for advice. What do any of you suggest? And one of my good buddies, Justin Brook, great marketer, great advertising guy. He said, Mark, he says, your brand is scattered all over the place. You need to focus on the brand that people expect of you. What I expect of you is all of your mind control marketing stuff. That's what people, the people who know you for the things for which you are most known, that's what they want. That's what they expect. From a marketing perspective, his advice is totally, totally right on. Now, I listen to that, and whenever I hear advice like that, I cannot deny the logic of it, right? From one perspective, it makes absolutely perfect sense. That is sound marketing advice. Having a single, clear, unified message and sticking to that and riffing around that narrow universe that you have carved out for yourself as a personal brand is very wise indeed. But here are some reasons why I'm hesitant, and I had an epiphany this morning as to why I don't think I will ever do that. All right, and it has to do with the Simpleology origin story in a way. When Simpleology first came out, I had shut down all of my businesses after going great guns in the early days, and shut them down, sold some off, and just kind of exited. And I was doing consulting for people behind the scenes, and a lot of the folks that I was consulting for came to me looking for marketing advice, but what I found what they really needed was to get their productivity unjacked. That was the real problem for almost every single one of them, because they all had great marketing ideas. And over time, what I have really come to understand is that all of these things are connected, okay? So if I give you a marketing tactic, but your body is jacked up in some way, that is going to lower your productivity. And if your productivity is low, I don't care how many great marketing ideas you have, you are not going to actualize them. So I can't talk to you just about marketing. I can't, because these things are all connected. For you to be a good marketer, you've got to have great productivity. And to have great productivity, you need to have great health. And to have great health, you've got to have a whole other certain things aligned. I'm happy to continue talking about marketing, and I will. I'll talk about that more. But if I'm only telling you that one piece of the picture, I'm doing you a disservice. To quote the great Paul Chek again, he says, we live in the era of the fit, sick person. There are a lot of people out there who are physically fit. They may be muscular and strong like me, but not fit and healthy, not healthy, right? They may have all kinds of, really serious health problems that they're not addressing because they're not, addressing what, Paul calls the four doctors, right? That is a beautiful, simplified way of talking about health in the similar way that we talk about a simplified view of health in Simpleology 103, the simple science of energy. It's interesting. I didn't even know Paul until after that came out, and he's one of these great connections where I meet this person who it turns out has very, very similar thinking to me. I've had great connections with a lot of people like that. Who I meet them and I realize, wow, man, it's amazing how many similar notions we have. My roommates that I'm living with right now. So, Mitch Miller, he and I were able to connect on a whole bunch of interesting levels that were strange connections that most people wouldn't have, right? That was one of the things that connected us in an interesting way. Now, let's talk about how things are connected in other ways. Okay, so what I just talked about represents why I think I can't talk about one topic because of the interconnectivity of all of these things, right? But I think it goes way, way deeper than that. Let's look at it. Let me give you a scientific view of this, and then let's explore a few examples of how this may occur. So there is this phenomenon in physics called spooky action at a distance. It is related to the notion of quantum entanglement. And you should Google this and look into it more. I'm going to give you a very, very simplified version of it, but it's the notion that if you have two particles that are entangled, if you change the state of one, you will change the state of the other. And these things can be connected across vast, vast differences, and the changes between the two are instant, regardless of the distance, right? So what we're talking about here is we are talking about some connection, some transfer of information that we do not yet completely understand that is faster than the speed of light. Einstein posited that nothing can move faster than the speed of light. Yet here we have a very clear example of information being transmitted far faster than the speed of light, instantaneously across any distance. Any distance. Now, does that mean everything is connected? No, but we at least have one observed example, if we're to believe these observations that are reported to us. I didn't make these observations, by the way. You didn't. That's another thing we need to be cautious about with science. We read when a scientist says that they observed a particular thing, we read about it, usually in a very watered down and misrepresented form of scientific journalism, right? We have to trust several things. We have to trust that the scientific journalist is getting it right, and 90% of the time they're not, because they're changing it into some clickbaity headline that doesn't really have, much that's supported by, the actual evidence in the paper itself, if you dig in deeply enough to read the paper, which, hardly any of us do. So that's why we're all so easily dupable. And then we have to trust that that scientist is reporting accurate information to us. And we know that sometimes they're not. We know that for a fact. There's some very, very clearly documented cases of many scientists not reporting the truth to us at all. In fact, even fabricating things. Now, is this a screed against scientists? No, absolutely not. I am a scientist in one sense. I revere science, but I believe that the institutions and that the people that are practicing it are often corrupted. And if we're not conscious of that, this is going to allow us to get into deep, deep trouble. And many of them are engineers and scientists and who are well educated. We tend to want to defend the scientists no matter what. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that that in itself is contra to science, right? If this is supposed to be about peer review, well, if you are a peer, you should actually be reviewing it. And reviewing it does not constitute, reading an abstract and going, that's interesting. And then, no, actual peer review would mean, corroborating the evidence. Right? Examining it at a level and saying, that appears to be sound. Interesting distinction here is the difference between soundness and validity, right? Something can be logically valid, meaning a syllogism. All, giraffes have long necks. My giraffe Joseph is a giraffe, therefore Joseph has a long neck. That is a valid syllogism. And probably sound, right? Let me give you an unsound but valid syllogism. Okay, what if I said, all giraffes are orangutans? My giraffe Joseph is a giraffe, therefore Joseph is an orangutan. That is logically valid. That is a logically valid syllogism. But it is based upon unsound assumptions. Okay, so that's another thing that we have to understand. You may be able to look at a scientific paper and look at the math and say, the math looks valid, right? But do we know that the observations were sound? Do we know that what they recorded is actually what they recorded and it's reported correctly? Now, let me talk about an interesting way that this affected me personally, recently. I generally don't like to trash talk. I don't like to speak ill of other people. I think that it has lots of negative ripple effects, right? I think this is a way that we're connected. Let me show you a way that may just be coincidence, but a spooky way that this came back to me. So in the last couple days, I actually trash talked someone. I tend to not hold beefs with people for too long. I try to make peace with them. This is actually a weakness sometimes, because there are people out there who will exploit it. But there's one guy, I had a beef with, who I think is, if there is such a thing, is as close to a legit sociopath as you can get. This is a person who, will deliberately get into your good graces and use you. There are people like that out there. There was a guy, who took advantage of my kindness to him and did a whole bunch of, really awful things to me behind the scenes. And, I don't even want to get into the details of it, right? And, it's not worth it to me to expend the energy on it, right? Now, if somebody's doing you harm in the moment, sometimes counter-striking and doing something to prevent it is wise, right? I'm not saying be completely passive. No, not at all. But I'm saying you got to let things go most of the time. And I hadn't really even thought about this guy for a long time, but he came up in a conversation with two people that I trust. One person is someone that I have known for a good time now that I trust, and it just came up in conversation, and we're confiding things in each other, and this is something I confided, right? And then I met a brand new person that I hadn't actually spoken with before. We run in the same circles. We have for decades, and it's just a guy that I had never actually connected with, finally connected with him. He confided some things in me about, or to me, about someone that we both know, that I was very surprised. Wow, I didn't know that person had wronged you so deeply. And I said, wow, I said, I think there's probably only one person that I have that kind of grudge with, that I would actually to this day, I would actively not trust. I'm not going to hold any anger about the person, but I will certainly hold no illusions about the fact that, man, this dude needs to keep his distance, and I need to be ready to counterstrike if this guy does something again, right? And I will not hesitate, right? So, I confided, in this guy. So in a 2-day span, I confided with two people about somebody that I had some animus towards. And this is against my code, more or less. I don't like to do this. Even if there is somebody who is actively moving against me, I will not talk trash about them. I will take matters into my own hands and I will deal with it, right? Whether it's face-to-face or whatever I have to do, it will be dealt with. Okay, but talking to people and doing all that snippy stuff, it's not a good idea, right? Because these things tend to come back. Now, here's a really strange way that it came back. So one of the buddies that I shared this with, my older friend here, this guy that I've known for a time now, and we were confiding things in each other. Yesterday, he confided in me that somebody had talked some trash about me, right? And it was a surprise because I've actually had very, very little contact with this person at all. I don't know how this person could even have a basis for making such a statement, because I think I've maybe exchanged 2 or 3 Facebook messages with this guy, period. So I don't know upon what basis this guy would have anything to say anything about me. But then it got into my head, right? It got into my head. And I started, and I was thinking about it. I was wondering, what could it be? And so to me, that's a sense of well, you're paying the price. When you went and you started, talking that trash, this is a way that it's coming back to you. Now the same thing is happening to you, or it happened a long time ago. Now you learn about it, and now it's occupying space in your mind, right? And that's space in my mind that could be placed on better things, more productive things, building better tools for Simpleology users, right? Doing better things to improve myself. Totally wasted mental energy. One of the reasons why I don't trash talk. I think if you think about this, you're going to find that things are connected in profoundly odd ways. Is this just the reticular activation system looking for connections? That's one of the hypotheses, that things are not necessarily as connected as we might suspect. But once we see that the connection might be there, we find it because that's what the RAS does. Who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is the cause and effect of this, right? Certain things I do bring about certain results, it seems, and it's worthwhile to pay attention to those phenomena. And I think that it's also very healthy to imagine that we are all indeed connected in some very, very strange ways, and that what we do to ourselves is going to affect our children, for example. That's something that we know on an epigenetic level now, right? If you haven't gone down that rabbit hole, do it. If you think that the changes you make in your body are not going to affect what is passed on to your children now, think again. We have strong scientific evidence now to show that it's not just your genetic code that's being passed on, it's your epigenetic code, and your epigenetic code is being modified by your behavior. And the example that you set is being passed on to your children. The example that you set is being passed on to everyone around you. The good that you create in the world is affecting the world around you, and the world around you comes back to you. I want to create a good, healthy, positive world to live in. And I know that that depends upon me being the best person I can, treating people the best people I can. So is everything connected? Maybe, but I think it's very, very useful to believe that they are, because I think that if we do think in that sense, and we do take responsibility for all of our actions through that lens, we can't help but create a better world. All right, that's it for today, folks. I will talk to y'all tomorrow. You have a beautiful day.